Yes, we had a fulsome conversation that will continue in the afternoon session about the Building Canada Act and also the key consideration of Inuit treaties and the upholding of the provisions within those treaties as a key consideration of this government. So we've had reassurances that the Bill C-5, the legislation, and the listed projects related to the implementation of Bill C-5 will not interrupt the processes under our modern treaties, and that there will be full partnership of Inuit within these processes.
Okay. Can you maybe just unpack that for us? Because there was a concern before, now it seems like that's gone, which is pretty substantial. What did you hear that gives you that feeling of assurance?
From the Prime Minister to Minister LeBlanc to Minister Hodgson, Minister Chartrand, Minister Goldmassey, all of the ministers that will be responsible for the implementation of the Act, and then at the Prime Minister's direction. He was unequivocal in stating that this legislation will not interrupt the processes that have been set up under our modern treaties when it comes to environmental assessment, when it comes to project reviews. The focus has been on what types of nation building projects are Inuit interested in building, how can we identify those projects together, and then how can we make good on those projects by implementing them. So the Prime Minister and his cabinet ministers couldn't have been any clearer in their assurances to Inuit leadership about the upholding of the constitutionally protected agreements that we have with the Crown that have clear provisions around how any natural resource projects go ahead in our settlement areas.
And just real quick, does that mean you have a veto? Does that mean communities, well, land claim organizations will have a veto?
I try not to use that terminology because our agreements talk about our ability to say yes or no. The processes and the provisions in our agreements could be defined as vetoes, but really we see them as enabling. The term veto is often misconstrued as a boogeyman in these discussions about natural resource extraction projects on Indigenous peoples' lands. Inuit have spent the last 40 years trying to figure out how to create circumstances where we are a part of the process all the way through. And every single day, jurisdictions in this country veto projects. Sometimes it's non-Indigenous governments that decide it is not in the best interests of that jurisdiction through legislation that they have created. So Indigenous people in veto is not a construct that is unique within this country about how any project gets off the ground. And for us, we have democratic functions within our agreements that allow for us to agree or disagree, to say yes or no. But ultimately, that is a part of the de-escalation of risk that industry wants to see, that government wants to see about developments within Inuit Nunangat and the participation of Inuit throughout. So I'm really optimistic about the ability for Canada to respect our agreements in this implementation phase of Bill C-5. But still, these are early days, and we look forward to the conversations ahead.
Your next interview is here. Do you have one more question before we go?
My colleagues might have questions. I wanted to ask you about the Arctic ambassador too, but I'll let my colleagues.
Yeah, so I just had one question actually on the Arctic ambassador. I'm wondering if you or the ITK overall had any say in who the Prime Minister chose as Arctic ambassador and what you make of his choice.
Well, at the last Inuit-Crown partnership meeting in November, Minister Jolie at the time had talked about the Arctic foreign policy. It was announced in Ottawa. We co-developed certain sections of the Arctic foreign policy with the Government of Canada, and we're very supportive of the foreign policy upon its release. One of the key components of the foreign policy is the recreation of the Arctic ambassador. We had hoped to do a full-scale co-developed process. That just didn't come to pass because of the election and because of other processes that interrupted it. I did have informal conversations with the last government about possible names. The Government of Canada has run with those possibilities and ultimately has chosen Virginia Mearns. I'm very pleased with the choice of the Canadian government. I think Virginia Mearns is going to be an incredible contributor in diplomacy at this point in time for Canada. And she's an Inuk from Nunavut, so also will bring that Inuit perspective to any room that she's in, whether here in Canada or abroad.
So just really quickly, was Virginia part of that list of names that...
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I think that's all for me.
Mr. Obed, thinking of a local perspective, in the conversations of Arctic security, our locals are more focused on wanting to ensure, like, addressing our housing crisis, the drug crisis, mental health crises, even just access to their own entrepreneur development. Do you know if these conversations are part of uplifting our territories other than just like military might? And if you could explain what conversations, if they are having around that?
We've been meeting since about 8:30 this morning. In the first 2.5 hours, we talked almost exclusively about infrastructure, and not just about dual-use infrastructure for military and communities, about essential infrastructure, whether it be healthcare, housing, community venues that bring our cultures together and cross, elders to youth. So all Inuit leaders from across Inuit-Nunagat talked about the importance of communities first. And in this, we have a list of 79 infrastructure projects that total about $30 billion. Some of those projects may end up as listed projects under the Bill C-5 legislation, but many of those projects are aimed at just building our communities and thinking about the essential needs of Inuit across Inuit-Nunagat. So yes, the community perspective and the urgent needs, whether it be where healthcare is delivered, or whether or not you can get the full suite of programs to graduate from high school in your community, or the need for an Inuit-Nunagat university. All of these issues were brought forward to the ministers and the Prime Minister, and we believe that we've been heard.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.